Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews. I am your host, Commander Claw. As you know, I like to bring you niche cards, the cards that are not often seen here on EDH Rec, Scryfall, or your friend's imagination or suggestion. I'm making a YouTube video, so y'all need to watch it. Like, comment, and subscribe if any of these cards tickle your fancy and you want to continue watching more Breaking Brews. But let's get right into it. The reason why you're here is because the Wise Mothman is such a powerful and popular new commander. If you don't know what it does, I'm going to go right to it. All right, the Wise Mothman is a 3/3 flying insect mutant. It says when it enters the battlefield or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. If you don't know, the rad counters is like the hottest thing right now as of almost April 2024. But anyways, whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. Yes, so straight up, this commander does lots of different things all at once. It's mill, it's proliferation, it's +1/+1 counters, it's an ETB trigger, it's an attack trigger. I think why this commander is so popular because all these abilities are pretty much on autopilot. They just do them themselves. Like the effects, the payoffs are going to happen themselves. So with that being said, let's explain radiation counter. If you don't want to listen to what radiation counters do, just skip maybe about 30 seconds more, going on to radiation counters and explaining. Yeah, radiation counters are also rad counters if you see them on the card, okay? Rad counters, radiation counters. First, at the beginning, my bad. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many cards. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose one life and a rad counter. So what's going to happen here is, yeah, you play the Wise Mothman or you give your opponent a rad counter. At the beginning of their pre-combat main phase, mill that many cards equal to the rad counters, right? When they mill a non-land card, they lose a life and a rad counter. So the rad counter can deplete. But what I want to talk about on this episode is you're automatically milling players. So you need to take advantage of milling your opponents. You're not paying mana and activating and tapping ability just to mill. Your opponent's got a pretty much a rad counter that is a mill counter, which is kind of crazy to even think about. So let's move on to the next card. Actually, the first set of cards for these new 5 cards suggested. Wow. You see that right there? It says dragons. You're looking at dragons. What dragon can fit in a soul tie deck? There's black, blue, and green. I'm about to show you. We got the Brain Stealer Dragon. It's a 6/6 flyer for 7 mana total. It actually is a dragon horror. So I'm just gonna read what it really does. I'm gonna read it here, right? At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of each opponent's library. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you spend mana as though it weren't man if it was mana of any color to cast it. Okay, sorry for the stuttering, but literally it's like Itali, Primal Storm. The dinosaur that flipped over your opponent's cards and you get to play it. This does the same thing, except for you have to pay mana. That's it. You just pay the mana, and the mana doesn't matter what color it is. Um, the next ability, I'm gonna move to the next slide. Is whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. Okay, okay, that's game ending. That's game ending. You know why? If you don't have, for example, any reanimation effect, bringing back a creature from your opponent's graveyard to your side of the battlefield, they lose life. So if they had that 5 mana creature, they lose 5 life. If you bring back 2 5 mana creatures, they lose 10 life. You get what I'm saying here. Maybe the card that I'm trying to talk to you about is Rise of the Dark Realms, where you put all creature cards into play on your side of the field. Yeah, that's game over for their opponents. I'm sure they have enough creatures mana value that equals their life total or more. So while you're doing, these payoffs for milling, let's mill, but like more on a repeatable basis with extra benefits. So I have Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, a 6 mana planeswalker. Just to let you know, they barely make any planeswalkers now. They only make it one per set. That's what I heard. Anyways, I'm go to yes. Legendary Planeswalker Ashiok. The +2 ability here. You draw a card. Each player puts the top 2 cards of the library into the graveyard. So you get to mill your opponents and you draw a card. And this mill effect is only kind of light on your end, so it's not going to kill you. But where it really can shine again is -5. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Bam! It's just sitting there. A freaking planeswalker that can reanimate creatures from a battlefield, from a graveyard onto your battlefield. Then it's -11. Gain control of all creatures target opponent's control. Exactly. You're just taking creatures from graveyards and on the battlefield. And remember, since it's the Wise Mothman, you're probably doing some kind of proliferation. So you literally get to proliferate these loyalty counters on your planeswalker. Yes. Yes. So cast doing the ultimate for -11 is not that hard. Moving on. Man, this is a really good card. And it just came out from Murders of Kavlov Manor, something like that. Okay, it's called Flotsam and Jetsam. Flotsam, the left side, says mill 3 cards, investigate. Create a clue token. It's an artifact with tap 2, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. Cool. We're not going to really use that. Well, you actually could. Mill 3 is not bad if you just need to get your graveyard started. But another powerful sorcery is Jetsam. It says each opponent mills 3 cards. Then you may cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it. Okay, yeah, this is where it shines. There's only 6 mana to do this, and you get to play 3 spells from an opponent's graveyard. Excuse me. You get to play 1 spell from each opponent's graveyard. So this gets ugly because if you've already milled them, which you've already done because your opponents had radiation counters, rad counters, you're literally stealing spells from their graveyard. And when I say spells, those are creatures, enchantments, instants, sorceries, artifacts, planeswalkers. Those are all spells. It's not limited to non-land permanents, creatures, non-token creatures, none of that. It says spells for 6 mana, and you get 3 spells. You know what? This card is so good, it's less than $1. Like and subscribe if you agree with me. And you don't even agree with me. This card is hot, man. I got more hot cards for you. It's actually coming up next. You ain't seen this one. You ain't seen this. You ain't seen this yet. I ain't seen it yet either. So, you ready? Yeah. Gralnock the Omnivore. You probably have him in your bulk bin. I'm hoping he surges in popularity because I was just reading and I was like, how come this card, what? It does what? Yes, okay. Let's get to it. For 4 mana, Simic Colors, it's a 3/3 frog. It says, whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from exile, exile with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. All right, you're thinking. Remember when you are milling from rad counters? Yeah. Whenever a permanent goes into your library goes into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter. So you are going to save your permanents, okay, and lands, and you get to cast them later. So this is good because if your opponents are trying to exile your graveyard, you've saved powerful cards that you can cast at a later time. This is almost like foretell, almost like suspend, putting these cards away in exile where they're protected. Yes, and even if Grolnok the Frog dies, right? It dies. You still can cast those spells because they have croak counters, and that's what they do. Yeah. And also, don't forget the first ability. Whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. So when you attack with him, you mill automatically 3 cards. Cool. But yeah, I ain't seen that. Moving on. So yeah, people want to control your graveyard, so it's time for you to control their graveyard. How are we going to do this? You're already reanimating, but maybe you're behind or you just want to close the game out and not give your opponents that chance, that opportunity to use a flashback or retrace or some kind of reanimation or some crazy card that comes from the graveyard and just comes back and wins the game for you. Yeah. So let's do this. We have Ashiok Dream Render. It is a planeswalker for 3 Demir colors. Comes with 5 loyalty abilities. It says spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their control to search their library. Awesome. So anybody that is trying to ramp and they need to search their library, no, doesn't exist. Okay. Next is this loyalty ability. -1. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then exile each opponent's graveyard. So what we doing here? You're making a mill, getting rid of cards. Then you get to exile each opponent's graveyard. But your graveyard exists. I don't think new players really understand how powerful graveyards are. And when players are able to cast spells from their graveyard, it's like an extra card in their hand. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm telling you. If you're new to Magic, make sure you want to exile an opponent's graveyard because it literally comes back to bite you if you let the graveyard sit. All right. 3 cards to audition. Actually, forget that. I got one more card for you. We're moving on. Centaur Fine Crasher, excuse me. It is a 1/1 for 4 mana plant Centaur. It reads Trample. Centaur Vine Crasher enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. Whenever a land card is put into a graveyard from anywhere, you may pay 2 green. If you do, return Centaur Vine Crasher from your graveyard to hand. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know what we're doing here. This is good because it's just a powerful creature that can continuously come back whenever a land is put into a graveyard from anywhere. That includes your opponent's graveyards. So when you're milling them through Rad Counters and you need a creature to come back for some reason, this is the creature to bring back. You just pay 2 green and you got your Centaur back into play. And you get to cast him and he gets the number one he gets a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. So that's your graveyard. Your 3 other opponents' graveyards. He could come in as a freaking 9/9. Come on, man. A 9/9 with trample for 4 mana that repeatedly comes back? Y'all sleeping on them. Then there's synergies out there, right? Let's talk about these synergies real quick. The Ozolith. You were already going to add that to your deck anyway. If you don't know what it does, it's a 1 mana artifact that says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it has counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from the Ozolith onto target creature. So yeah, you're going to be having your Centaur Vine Crasher die, reanimate, put those +1 counters on the Vine Crasher. When he dies, move him on to the Ozolith. Do it again, or as many times as possible. Then you put it on your commander, the Wise Mothman, and swing for commander damage because you're going to be putting all those counters that you have from the Vine Crasher onto him. Game, set, match. Thank you for watching another episode of Breaking Brews. If you enjoyed this video or you're just obsessed with the Wise Mothman and you didn't see the first Breaking Brews that I have about him, yeah, the video's above. So try to can't even talk. So watch that. But otherwise, stay continued. Want to watch my channel? Jeez, I cannot talk today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And for more, the Wise Mothman. Peace.